Eldrazi post on the on Legacy, Ad Nauseam on Modern, and Esper Control for Standard. This actually, so I had a chance to play some Azorius aggro. Actually, my RPTQ. So these are some friends of mine. My entire preparation for the RPTQ was a 90-minute conversation with Elenbogen and McVety about this list, where they handed me the list and a sideboard guide. So I got to play this straight up.
And you lost one match at your
I lost
RPTQ?
one match.
It was a bad match to lose, but you only lost one?
I lost one match. Yep.
Right.
It was not to Esper. I felt they believed the Esper, when in that conversation, to be close. This matchup actually to be very close.
Sure. Do you think that there are any cards that swing it particularly far one way or the other that you could have access to before sideboarding?
Right. So according to them, a lot of times it's about a Kaya's Wrath check. And Max advised in this situation, he said, don't play around it too much. A lot of times the correct decision is to actually just lose to Kaya's Wrath.
Yeah, sure. That absolutely makes sense. If you end up just playing out one creature at a time, you're just kind of playing into the Esper Control, answer your cards, build back up strategy.
Yeah, I see. He said, don't play into Kaya's Wrath if you can't beat it. And then I remember asked, about how often do you think you can beat it? And he said, not usually.
Yeah. Yeah, that's perfectly reasonable. And do you think that things get much better post-board?
Yeah, and when we get post-board, I can tell you kind of the strategy they had put me on. You see here right now 2 Thought Erasures from Benson. They have taken care of a Snubhorn Sentry and the turn 3 History Benalia, which is actually a pretty big hit.
Sure, and most of these are just trying to knock McVety off of his ideal curve here. We took the other 1-drop to make McVety only be able to play 1 Snubhorn Sentry on 2, which hurts the odds of Loxodon on 3, and then taking Benalia plays to that as well. Yeah,
I think Max doing that, you see with this Venerated Loxodon in, this is kind of the playing around Kaya, not respecting Kaya's Wrath plan, right? We even started the game of Dauntless Bodyguard. It's not protecting anything.
Absolutely, and there's a spot where you would not see Cowden taking these early cards like this if he had a Kaya's Wrath. He'd be taking some of the heavy hitters instead.
And this time it is a Moment of Craving and a 3rd Thought Erasure. I believe leaving Cowden's last cards as Absorb and Precognitive Perception.
Ooh, that was a Surveil to the top. That can't be good.
Not the best. We see 5 power in play for McVety, a 1/4 Snubhorn, and a 4/4 Loxodon. They hit in for 5. Land and a pass. And that would be why. This is the Kaya's Wrath. Could not think of a better card here.
Well, normally can't beat it. Let's see if McVety's able to find a way this game.
5th land and a pass. So far, looks like no. Cowden picked up Teferi. Does not have a 5th land yet. Here's Healer's Hawk.
Did you feel Spicklemire cringe?
Another Teferi. He didn't even absorb the Healer's Hawk.
It's just not
that's
something
the
that's really worth it. Cowden's at 13 life. Are you kidding?
We can Teferi -3 that Healer's Hawk. He doesn't have the land yet. He still doesn't have the land. Here's the 4th Thought Erasure. Surveil. If it's a land, it's on top. Max has gotten to almost Bodyguard. Suddenly there's some pressure. If Max wins this game, that is going to be disgusting.
Cowden just has a bunch of 5s in his hand, and not 5s on the battlefield in terms of mana.
On Cowden's side, I might have wanted to absorb that Dauntless Bodyguard. Here's Benelish Marshall, and Cowden doesn't have the absorb mana up! Oh my goodness, Max is going to win this. He swings for 5, Cowden down to 7.
Cowden doesn't have absorb mana. He only has 1 blue.
He only has single blue. Oh, you're right. Cry of the Carnarium. That's in the main deck. It's going to work here. 2 creatures exiled. You did see 2 copies of Cry. I believe Jonathan Hobbs' SCG Dallas list was playing some copies in the main. We see Sky Merger Aspirant, Benelish Marshall, a pass. Does he find the land yet? I don't think it was for Cowden.
That is a
Mortify. Okay. That'll buy him a turn. Takes care of Benelish Marshall.
You do what you got to do here.
If Max draws another threat, he might even be protected from Teferi. Cowden down to 2. Another Aspirant. So Teferi doesn't win anymore.
Here's a window.
Cowden draws. That's a shock land. Oh, my goodness.
That's it.
Did McVety do it? I think. And Cowden. You can see the disgust there as he picks up the cards, right? Yeah, I feel it. And Max is just as surprised.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You see that?
He had that eyebrow. That was his opponent on 13, and we're on top decking Healer Hawk.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. There's a spot where McVety was just kind of out of resources, but
Wow.
Cowden didn't do anything for several consecutive turns. And that's the 5% that you play to in those situations.
Max McVety taking game number 1. That's the first game result of the round.
Look, that's how you get results with the mono white.
That is a hard one to shake off. Well played there by Nick. Just did not work out.
Yeah, he did basically everything he could. He always surveilled his cards to the graveyard, except for the Kaya's Wrath.
Yeah, yep.
He
that's the one you want to keep.
He made all the decisions that he could. It's just, that's magic.
He registered
sometimes.
main deck Cry of the Carnarium as well.
Yeah.
Which is you do for this matchup.
And he drew it.
And he drew it. Yeah. He took all the edges his deck gave him.
And that's kind of the drawback of just registering all of these big, clunky spells sometimes is, precognitive perception sounds like a great card, but you have to cast it.
And the one thing I want to point out here, you notice Andrew and Max talking a lot here. So one thing, you don't see Max McVety play Modern very much. His range on Modern is actually, he's a bit of an ad nauseum specialist player.
Ooh.
Yeah, no, that is his go-to deck in Modern.
Plays.
It's a rare one, right? So Andrew is against ad nauseum this round, and so that's why you notice he's just talking to Max a lot.
Right, and Benson is actually one of the ad nauseum specialists that you'll find around on the internet that just plays ad nauseum no matter what.
Right. So, let's look at the sideboards. Starting on Nick Cowden's side, a copy of the Eldest Reborn, 2 Lyra Dawnbringer, a Disdainful Stroke, 2 Duress, 4 Thief of Sanity, which is kind of like the best card in Esper Control, oddly.
Right.
2 Basilica Bellhaunt, and 3 copies of Hostage Taker.
So, most of what we're going to be looking at here are, honestly, the creatures. They're things that block. They help you cut a bunch of the less impactful spells out of your deck. We saw precognitive perception basically just be a blank that game.
Right.
That's the type of card that Cowden wants to get out of his deck for the post-board games.
Yeah, I certainly think the 3 Hostage Taker are there. I'm a bit interested in the Basilica Bellhaunt. That one actually can be hit or miss against the mono white deck.
Yeah, that one's particularly better on the play, which we do see Cowden on the play for game 2 due to losing the first one. It's not great, but it does honestly just have a ton of toughness and give him a little bit of life, which is something that you just kind of need, even if it doesn't feel excellent all the time.
Yeah. On Max McVety's side here, I can kind of talk a bit about the sideboard plan that I believe he's going to be on, or I mean, unless it's changed. So he has 3 copies of Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, 3 Baffling End, a Deputy of Detention, 2 Disdainful Stroke, and Negate, 3 Tecatli Honor Guards, and 2 copies of Tithe Taker. Now, a lot of this, what he's going to be wanting to do, or plans to do in this matchup, is to go bigger and try to kind of get around some of the threats that fold to. He doesn't want to fold as hard to Wrath. So Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, is a big play. It's something you can do to extend into a Wrath. When they play a Wrath, it's something you can punish them. I think you're going to see some amount of just Negate and Disdainful Stroke, but I don't actually expect all 3 of them to be in here. He doesn't particularly like blue cards, think they're that strong in this matchup. Instead, going for things like Ajani, and I would think Tithe Taker will come in here as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to go look at this Ajani Adversary of Tyrants for a moment.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the top 8 match from Baltimore a few weeks, where we saw Jacob Hagan play a turn 4 Ajani Adversary of Tyrants against Abe Corrigan on Esper Control, and eventually ulted that Ajani, and the game went for what felt like 20 more turns, and Esper Control just didn't have a way to ever deal with it.
Right.
And
once it ults, we're done.
That's it. The game is basically over at that point without a card in the vein of Ethereal Absolution.
Yeah, I think like Dawn of Hope can do it too, but I don't believe Cowden has registered it.
No, I'm not seeing it on his list here.
Yeah, other than that, those are the only cards that actually can still fight through an Ajani emblem.
Right, and one thing I want to draw a little bit of attention to is Cowden only has 3 copies of Kaya's Wrath in his 75. And that's going to bite him a little bit here, where we see he has an extra copy of Precognitive Perception. So it's very possible that he's just leaned into beating up on the mid-range and control decks like Nexus. We also see main deck copies of Negate as well, and those are going to bite him here. So he's a lot of things that he's looking to be sideboarding out.
Yeah, I think you did see so the 2 Cry goes back to that John Hobbs list that we had on the tour. Typically that's only a 3 Kaya's Wrath deck, but it normally has the 4th one in the sideboard, which he doesn't have today.
Exactly.
Thought Erasure again from Cowden. Kind of does speak to the matchup that he has to keep that card in.
Right, it's definitely the type of card that you're way happier with it on the play than you are the draw, so we may see him shaving a little bit on those going into the next game, but here it definitely plays because you can be a little bit soft to Tithe Taker and Adano Vanguard if you don't have a Cry of the Carnarium.
Max's hand, 2 Adano Vanguard, a Tithe Taker, and History of Benalia. So Nick Cowden will get to pick between those.
This is a very strong hand in the matchup.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons going back to that blue card dilemma here on Max McVety's side is that because of how Esper controls sideboards, you actually don't get to board out cards like Conclave Tribunal in this matchup. You actually have to keep them around for Lyras, for possible, even Basilica Bell Haunts. The cards that Max actually tends to board out is the card Snubhorn Sentry in this deck. And Healer's Hawk.
Right, Healer's Hawk, Skymarch Aspirant, these are the kinds of cards where they rely on you having a bunch of resources in order for them to get up off the ground. And since Esper is just trying to trade resources a bunch, they end up just not playing how you want them to.
Yeah, Aspirant ends up staying in because the deck has so many...
It's just a 2-1.
Well, you have so many Convoke cards that so the deck's an 18 1-drop deck. And one of the things that I remember they were talking about sideboarding it is they don't go below 14 1-drops ever. Just they think the deck stops being functional. So while Skymarch Aspirant's bad, it's like enough far, it's still below all the Hawks and Snubhorns in this matchup. So you have to play all 4, but you're absolutely right. It gets wrathed up a lot. You get 2 for 1 a lot with it.
Exactly. You just kind of need a density of elite Vanguards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here is Tithe Taker. That one's good against most removal. Max choosing to play that over Adanto Vanguard this turn.
Right, and the idea here may just be trying to play around Cry of the Carnarium a little bit. Since Kaya's Wrath doesn't kill Adanto Vanguard, this makes it so Cowden's quote-unquote Cry of the Carnarium turn is weaker.
Yeah, I mean, Cry still cleanly answers this, but then if it's Cry into Kaya's Wrath, then the Adanto Vanguard's still around.
Exactly.
We see in Cowden's hand Mortify a possibility, so if he's going to cast it, he's going to main phase it, because he can't play it on McVety's turn, and ends up main phase shooting down the Tithe Taker, so that does feel like a win for Max.
Yeah, that's got to feel good, where here you even get to attack with your Spirit token.
Yeah. Not a bad card for the matchup. You saw them coming in out of the sideboard. That token is on the way. It's not a missed trigger.
Jading Clumparens to the feature match area, if you please.
All right. And now it's getting a little sort of right. It's attacking in as well. We're finding the token. It's attacks in for 3.
It's a big box of tokens. Just give it a second.
Cowden should be down to 15 here, and it looks like History of Benalia, the follow-up play from Max. That one was left in the hand.
And this is one where you see McVety just respecting the Cry of the Carnarium still.
Yeah. Swings in for 3, makes a Knight token. Fourth land here for Nick. Just going to main phase that Chemister's Insight.
That's got to feel like a win for McVety here.
Yeah, your thoughts on main phasing there as opposed to, now the Tithe Taker is gone?
That one's a little bit strange. He was likely just looking for his land drop in this spot.
Okay.
No, that's not even
true.
He
already had it. He already had it,
yeah. It's an interesting spot if you just feel like feels like he needs more resources and is trying to dodge something like Negate or Disdainful Stroke.
That's possible, yeah. It does stop blue cards. I mean, if you just 100% know you're casting this.
Yeah, if the cards in your hand are not very good and you're specifically digging towards better resources, then that is a way to make sure that you get the opportunity to do that. We also saw game 1 where McVety is just playing into it, right?
Yeah.
And so if Cowden expects McVety to call the bluff anyway, making sure it resolves through counter magic is going to be a little stronger there.
Yeah, game 2 is trickier as far as calling the bluffs on Kaya's Wrath because your opponent has so many different things they can do. It's also Lyra, Hostage Taker. The games do get worse after sideboard. A swing in, though, for looks to be 5 from McVety, sends Cowden down to 10.
Does Cowden have another land in his hand?
Unclear. He picked up a Hostage Taker off that Chemister's Insight. And Max can continue deploying into this. Here's a Adanto Vanguard and a Venerated Loxodon. And this is one of the things, again, where I said, You just don't always respect the Kaya's Wrath.
Right, and this is a spot where this Adanta Vanguard is going to live through a Kaya's Wrath, even if Cowden has it. And Cry of the Carnarium isn't close to good enough anymore.
No,
now these Knights live through it.
Yeah, now if he doesn't have Kaya's Wrath, I'm not sure any other card saves him.
Exactly, and even that is just getting to play more than it is putting him firmly ahead in the game.
Yeah, a bunch of pressure here. You see a hand. I mean, there is a Hostage Taker, a 5th land, Absorb, Teferi. I don't think any of these matter.
No, there's just so much power on the battlefield. We also see that Cry of Carnarium hanging out.
Really solid play by Max to make
absolutely.
that Venerate Lux. If he doesn't make the Luxodon there, then this Cry actually cleans up the board.
Yeah, exactly. And now we just see it would leave him with Knight Elephant.
Yeah.
And that's a cool 14 damage.
With 2 3/3s and that History of Benalia about to go off, that's the 10 damage right there.
Exactly. Even without it, since the Loxodon lives, that's 10. So just gaining some life isn't even good enough.
So you know there's a team name that these guys have.
Hit me.
So normally when they play with Tyler Hill, it's the Delta Flyers. Because
that's nice.
So when they play with Spicklemire, Andrew tweets this out as the Delta Myers.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a nice one. Hostage Taker takes care of Venerate Luxodon, but that's going to be it. So Max McVety, a clean 2-0 win there over on the standard table. Wins from some of his teammates as well. Elenbogen and Benson going to 3. Spicklemire up 1-0.
That's a bit of a swing as well.
Yeah,
Is it Phoenix is generally a huge dog in the ad nauseum matchup.
Yeah, so we're going to go over to the Legacy match where Game 2 is underway. Clay Spicklemire is up 1-0.
And that's one where Eldrazi Post needs to have one of its early hate rocks, either the Chalice of the Void, the Trinisphere, etc., or Is It Delver just kind of gets to do its thing.
All right, so Montaquila, which is how he says his name, before I get a bunch of hate on,
There's only one L. It makes sense.
Thought-Knot Seer in play. We do have Terramander and Grim Lavamancer in play for Spicklemire. Blood Moon looks like it's gone. Yeah, that was the Thought-Knot Seer. Makes sense. Vapor Snag on Thought-Knot Seer. We got a nice tempo game going on from Clay. But you can only do that so long against the Eldrazi decks.
That's fine. That's all you need for a tempo. You know your days are numbered. You just know how many days you get to kill them.
You got to know what the number is.
Exactly. They're good numbers, Matthias.
Chain Lightning, Force of Will in Clay's hand. I have Ugin, Glimmerpost, Ancient Tomb on Montaquila's side, so he doesn't have a Cavern or anything like that. Force of Will could play here.
Chain Lightning Lavamancer does clean up an Eldrazi.
And a swing from the Grim Lavamancer, just getting every point of damage you can out of the card. Nicholas down to 13.
This is a nice line because you know that your number of Lavamancer activations are fairly limited because you want to grow this Terramander pretty badly in order to race effectively. And while there are 3 fetch lands in the graveyard right now, as well as the one on the battlefield, that's only 2 Lavamancer activations.
Looks like a swing to 13. Chain Lightning going to send Benson down to 10. Warping Whale is the play.
Ooh, that was
to
to
counter
make
Chain Lightning. No, to counter Chain Lightning, right? Or was it making a? It made a spawn token.
That's
or Scion.
an Eldrazi Scion.
Eldrazi Scion. It even has power. It's not a 0/1. And that is because he needed to make his way up to Endbringer. Or how about Walking Ballista? Don't mind Walking Ballista. Clay's hand, yeah, not going to be able to take care of that. He had a Force Will, but did not have a blue card, so Ballista shoots down both creatures. Clay's without a threat. Draws Brainstorm. Maybe that'll find one.
That's good at digging people out.
Yeah, there's an uncracked fetch here as well, so could complete the Brainstorm. His hand looks like he's got a bunch of Force of Wills.
Did he draw threat Force of Will in a land so he just gets to put 2 lands back?
The land might be a wasteland, and if it is, then it gets interesting.
Ooh, that's
He
a
might
good
want
point.
the wasteland. I think he's putting both Force of Wills away. Kept one Force of Will. It's Wasteland, Delver, Force are the 3 he has kept.
Okay, so the plan here is to let the Thought-Knot Seer resolve and take his Force of Will, but the Force of Will on top of his library flips the Delver of Secrets, and that lets him just race the Thought-Knot Seer.
Do you think he's going to draw the Force or just transform with it?
Probably just going to transform with it and shuffle because he is just going...
Yeah.
His plan here is to race.
Well, here's Thought-Knot Seer. That's going to make the decision pretty easy as the Force is gone. I can't imagine he wants to draw Force of Will now.
Absolutely not, no. And tapping the Ancient Tomb does change the clock.
Yeah, Montaquila down to 6. A Transform. Well, he's going to be down to 3. Yeah, Clay does not want to draw the Force of Will, so after it reveals, but before the draw step, he will crack his Scalding Tarn.
Bolt, 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 bolt.
And remember, if this is a win, this will take the round for the Delta Myers. As it is. I'm just going to run that as much as I can. That's a great name.
Someone has to. It's all right. I like it when the super groups have names.
Ponder here. Can he find a Lightning Bolt or a Chain Lightning? That would be nice.
Well, he didn't snap anything to the top.
It's not probably not there as he's shuffling.
This Delver getting to transform kind of tells Spicklemire that there's not a Warping Whale hiding out in Montaquila's hand.
Red card. Swings in for 3. Nicholas down to 3.
And
can he answer that Insectile Aberration? He's got to this turn. Endbringer, if he had that extra life from the Ancient Tomb, would actually play here, but it doesn't. It has Summoning Sickness.
no, and there's maybe a point where Montaquila may have been better served casting the Endbringer next turn to just not die.
Yeah.
Because if the game goes long, Montaquila's cards are more powerful than Spicklemire's, and things like Glimmer Post can get him more life.
Down to 1 to cast Karn, Scion of Urza. Feels like the odds that this will do things for him are very low. I guess
I'm not sure what card he's looking for.
Batterskull and a land. Clay gives him the Batterskull, and that's not going to do it. So Clay Spicklemire wins 2-0, which means that is going to be the round. Modern is going to be left on game number 3, but it doesn't matter. We have a 2-0 win for Clay and a 2-0 win for Max.
And that's just kind of the power that you see of the Volcanic Island Delver decks in the